if you didn't get the warm-up, I've already started the timer, so be sure you get the warm-up in. When you finish it, you can bring it to me, and I'll trade you for your notes pages.
Wait, what? Oh, we're returning notes today?
We're doing notes today. No, you're going to turn in the warm-up.
Oh, you're gonna
You have 6 minutes left. Yeah, I'll give you your notes to put in your journal when you finish. So if you're already finished, you can go ahead and bring it up here. I'll give you your notes. I'll give you your notes. Did everybody get the notes? So at the very top of that first page,
I cannot read that.
so to factor means to rewrite in a state of multiplication. To rewrite in a state of multiplication. So the reason that the greatest common factor was in that skills check today is because it's an important part of our lesson for you to remember what we mean by greatest common factor. So when we are factoring and rewriting it as a multiplication problem, all we're doing is like backwards distributing. Okay, we're taking whatever was distributed into our parentheses and pulling it back out. So we're taking it from the simplified form, okay, of 7x plus 21. So we're taking this form, which is the simplified form that we've been getting it to, and we're undoing that. Okay? So the greatest common factor of 7x and 21 is 7. I can divide both of those terms by 7 evenly and not have any decimals or remainders. So a lot of times in algebra, you will see the long division bar written like this, upside down, rather than like this, like you saw in elementary school. Okay, the long division bar. It's the same thing. It's meaning the same thing. It just looks more like a fraction. You can also write it as 7x plus 21 divided by 7, or go ahead and distribute it out like that and divide both of them. Any of those ways are an appropriate way to show that you are dividing by the greatest common factor. This number out here that you choose to divide by needs to be your greatest common factor. So 7, 7x, okay, 7x divided by 7 is x. 21 divided by 7 is 3. So when we factor it out, okay, so in the step over here it says make sure that nothing can be pulled out again. Okay, make sure that no other number or variable can be pulled out again. If so, then repeat the first two steps again. If you've pulled out the greatest common factor, then you shouldn't need to repeat the steps. Then we're going to write it with the greatest common factor out here. So this should be your greatest common factor. And inside the parentheses is everything, okay, left after you pull out. Okay. So after you pull out the GCF, everything else, or your answer, when you divide it, goes inside the parentheses there. And if I work it back out, 7 times x gives me 7x. 7 times 3 gives me positive 21. I should get back to my original problem. If I've done it right, okay, I'm not changing the value of anything. I am simply rewriting my original problem, okay, in factored form. Okay, they're exactly the same thing. So 7 parentheses x plus 3 equals 7x plus 21. These are the same exact thing. We're not changing the value of anything. We're just rewriting it in another form. So now if we look at this next example, we're going to do all the work on this one. They did the work on the last one, and this one we're going to do the work on. So what is the greatest common factor between x squared and 5x? Is there a number that's in common with both of them?
No.
No. 1, but 1 doesn't matter. Okay, what about a variable in common with both of them?
X.
X. So our greatest common factor is x. So I'm going to divide x squared minus 5x by x. So you can write it like that. You can write it as a fraction, like we've been used to seeing. Either way is an appropriate way to write it. So if I divide x squared by x, what do I get? X squared divided by x is
Negative 5x with an exponent 2.
Nope. So x squared divided by x, one of these x's, if I rewrote this as x times x, one of these x's would cancel each other out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leaving me just an x. And if I did the same thing for the negative 5x divided by x, the x would cancel out and leave me just negative 5. So my factored form has my greatest common factor listed first, and then whatever my answer was after I divided everything by my greatest common factor goes inside the parentheses. And if I check my work, I should be able to say x times x is x squared, x times negative 5 is negative 5x. So it checks out that this is the same as what I started with. So this is my answer. The little arrows are just my work where I checked my work. So down at the bottom, which expression below shows 5x squared plus 35x factored correctly? Are they all correct? Okay, so don't say anything out loud. Take about 30 seconds and decide for yourself which one that you will vote for as being factored correctly. And then I'm going to have you move around the room. So once you make your decision and I tell you, if you vote for the first one, you're going to go stand on the same side of the room as it. So over here on this side. If you vote for the middle one, you're going to stand in the middle of the room. And if you vote for the last one, you're going to go stand on the other side of the room. So make your decision. About 10 more seconds. So go ahead and stand up and make your way to whichever one you're voting for. If you're voting for the last one, you're going to go over there on that wall. If you're voting for the middle one, you're going to come stand in the middle. And if you're voting for the last one, you're going to stand over here. So everybody should be standing. That lets me know that they voted. Okay, even if your desk is in the area you want to stand in, I want everybody to stand up. That way I know that you're voting. You have voted. See what happens when you stand up?
I didn't even know I had it.
Okay. Okay. So are you three all standing over here for that for the first one? Okay, and you guys are all standing in the middle, and so nobody chose the last one. Okay. So why did y'all choose the first one?
I don't understand. I know.
Okay. So why did you choose the middle one then?
Because
while they think about there.
It said on the first one, it said that x was squared.
Okay.
Because the other x cancels when an x is out.
Okay, because you pulled an x out, because you can pull an x out of both of them. Okay. And what about the 5? Why did you pick the 5 to come out?
I don't know.
What was the common denominator?
Common factor.
Common factor.
Mm-hmm. So the greatest common factor is the 5x. Okay. Will you get 5x squared plus 35x for all of them?
Yes.
Yes. If you distribute whatever's out front into the parentheses, you will get 5x squared plus 35x for all of them. What makes the middle one more correct than any of the other ones?
Because you have to, how I know this is because you have to take out an x, because those x's cancel each other out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we did last time.
Okay.
You
So
can't have an x within x over.
I talked about this step 3 a little bit in the first one, and I kind of skipped over it in our second example that we did before. Okay, so once you pull out your greatest common factor, or what you think is your greatest common factor, you need to check your answer and make sure after you've divided, can anything else be pulled out? So if this were my problem and I only pulled out my 5, can I pull something else out of what's left in the parentheses? Yes, right? There's still, both of them still have an X on them, which is common between them, so it can come out. And on this one, if I only pulled out the X, well, look at my numbers. Isn't there still something that can be pulled out of my numbers? Okay. So these are factored, but not completely, okay? You can go back to your desks now. So this is just a common factor, and this is just a common factor. It's not the greatest common factor. So the middle one actually pulls out the greatest common factor. There's nothing left that can be factored out in this left in the parentheses. Everything that could be pulled out that's common between them has been pulled out. Over here in this one, there's still an X left. And in this one, there's still the multiples of 5 left, right? Okay. So to be factored correctly, this should not be able to have any more common factors in it. It has to be as little as it can be. The only thing that should be divided, they both can be divided by, is 1. Okay. Does everybody understand now why the middle one is the correct one, or considered the correct one versus the other two? Okay, so on the next page, this is your next page of notes. These are just some examples to do together really quick, and then you'll be able to work on your assignment. So, what is the greatest common factor between 4x squared and 20? Does everybody agree? Is it 4?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a variable that we can pull out as well?
1x?
Is there an X on the second term?
No.
There has to be a letter, that same letter on everything if we can pull it out. So we can only pull out the 4. So 4x squared divided by 4 leaves me what? Just x squared. Okay, and negative 20 divided by 4 leaves me negative 5 to go right there. Can I pull anything else out between the x squared and the negative 5?
No.
No, so that's my final answer. That is the factored form. If I distribute that back and do 4 times x squared, I will get 4x squared, and 4 times negative 5, I get negative 20. So I did that correct. Okay, that's just my check.
She's saying something about when you multiply, you add, so it shouldn't be a 4 on top.
There's no x out here. I'm not multiplying. There's no other x out here to be added to this. So it's just the 4 times the 1 that's right there. Right? Okay. So on this next one, okay, think about it for a moment and then we'll walk through it together. What do you think, don't answer out loud, but what do you think is going to be the greatest common factor? I'm rewriting it on here to see if that will help you.
Oh, wait.
So you think the 3 is the greatest common factor, at least one of them, right? Okay, so 3. because 3 can be divided by 3 and 6 can be divided by 3 evenly. What about the variables?
X and
X.
Y.
Yeah, X and Y.
X and Y. There is a pair of X and Y's in both of them. Okay. So I can pull out an X and a Y for both of them. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So what am I left in my first term after I pull my 3 and my X and my Y out?
With X.
Just the X right
and
here.
Y.
Right? I've pulled out one of the Y's over here. Right? This XY I've pulled out over here. It's now in front. So all that's left is the X.
And a Y. And Y.
Not
Is
in
the
that
Y
first
on the end of
term.
that?
Not for this one.
Oh, for the first one?
For the first term, the only Y that's there got pulled out front here. And then 6 divided by 3 is what?
2.
2. Okay, this X and Y is this same X and Y that I already pulled out front here. So I'm only left with a Y. So my final answer here is 3xy times x plus 2y. And if I check my work, right, 3x times x, well, that's 3 times 1, which is 3, x times x, which is x squared, and y doesn't have anything to multiply to. And then if I do 3xy times 2y, I have 3 times 2, which is 6, and x times, well, there's no other x, so there's x there, and y times y, which is y squared. Is that the same thing that we started out with?
Yes.
Okay. So we factored it correctly. So this was just our check. So I'm going to erase it from my notes just to be less confusing of which one is the actual answer. So here's my answer. Okay. So number 3. See if you can work it out on your own really quick, and we will talk about it. Are you going to have a variable in your greatest common factor?
No.
Why not?
It's 50 don't have an variable.
Everything doesn't have it, right? They all have to have it. So if I can't factor out a variable, what's the only thing I can factor out?
A number.
A number.
Which is
10.
Always check that lowest number first. So the smallest number that's there, does it divide into everything? Because you know it divides into itself. So if it divides into everything else, it is your greatest common factor. If it doesn't, then you have to get a smaller number than that. Does that make sense? Okay, so I can pull out a 10. Okay, 10 divided by 10.
X2.
Just leaves my x squared. Okay, 30x divided by 10.
3x.
Leaves 3x. And 50 divided by 10.
5.
That's it. We're done with it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about if we end up with something like this, there's one more step that we're going to do. But as far as today goes, this is all that you are doing. Okay? So we've got more examples at the bottom. So when I mean this is all we're doing, we're not factoring it any more than that today. Okay, but we are going to talk about these last 4 examples, and this will go really quickly. As long as you guys remember what perfect squares mean. What does perfect squares mean?
Perfect square is when, isn't that when you click factor on the calculator and click enter and then you get the number and then?
When there's no remainder.
Yes and no. Okay, a perfect square means that it has a square root, right? Which means the same thing times the same thing will get that number. So x squared is a perfect squared because x times x equals x squared. 25 is a perfect square because 5 times 5 equals 25. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you are not sure if it's a perfect square, use the square root symbol on your calculator. Okay, it's a yellow, it's in yellow, which means you have to hit the control first. So hit control and get the square root symbol. And then if you put 25 under it, then it would tell you 5.
And the answer is 5?
Nope. So the answer, because we're dealing with the difference of squares, okay, there's two things that we need to remember. We talked about difference of squares before break. Right? And the difference of squares was when we had two things like 4x plus 3 times 4x minus 3. And when I multiplied them all out, however you multiply, whether you did the box method or not, right, we would have 4x times 4x is 16x squared. 4x times negative 3 is negative 12x. 4x times positive 3 is positive 12x. And 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. What happens to my two middle terms right here?
They cancel each other out.
They cancel each other out. Okay, so when you come across something that only has two terms in it and you need to factor it, you first need to check if it's got difference of squares or if it has greatest common factors that you can pull out. Okay, so when you only have two terms, for it to be a difference of squares, there's some things it has to be. First, both terms must be perfect squares. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is there must be a minus in the middle. Okay? If both of those things are not true, then it is not a difference of squares. So once you've determined if both of your terms are perfect squares, then you need to decide, is that a minus sign in the middle? So the square root of my first term is x, because I wrote it out here, so I'm going to split those x's up, one in each parentheses. The square root of 25 is 5, or 5 times 5, so I'm going to split them up, one in each parentheses. And then I have to make sure that I have a positive and a negative so that the middle term will cancel out, and I'm done. So look at number 2 on your own really quickly. See if you can figure out how you would factor x squared minus 49. Okay, if you're not sure, use the square root on the calculator. Right? Anytime a variable has a square, it's a perfect square. Anytime the power is an even power, it's a perfect square. So what times what gives me x squared? And 7 gives me 49. Okay, so why didn't you bring a calculator with you? You're going to need it for your assignment. So what do I put in the middle? A plus and a minus. Okay. What about example number 3? Are they both perfect squares? Is there a minus sign in between them?
Wait, there's no minus sign. Isn't there have to be a minus sign?
There has to be a minus sign. So this one cannot be factored.
Why? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Okay, because for it to be a difference of squares, it has to have a minus sign right there.
Oh,
Has to be difference, or they won't cancel out. You can do like we have up here, x plus 5, x minus 5, or x plus 9, x minus 9, but you won't get a plus sign there, you'll get a minus sign there. So that doesn't work. And then if you have them both plus there, then you'll have a middle term because nothing cancels. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work with the plus sign.
so it's always a minus only?
Minus only is all that works for this.
And it's
Yeah.
always gonna be plus and minus on each parentheses.
Mhm. Yes. Okay, so what's the square root of 9x squared?
3x.
3x. So split them up. What's the square root of 16?
4.
And a plus and a minus. It does not matter which order you put plus or minus in, as long as one has a plus and one has a minus.
We're done with this, right?
You're done with the notes. Okay, your assignment. Okay, on the front side that I'll hand you is this, difference of squares. There's 8 problems here. In Go Formative, you will answer which color that was the correct answer choice. You still have over 5 minutes of class left, so you have time to start on this. If you choose to color the bottom and turn it in for bonus points, you can't. You do not have to color the bottom, but if you do, you can turn it in for bonus points. And then on the back side is 6 greatest common factor problems to work out. So the difference of 2 squares is all multiple choice there. You're picking which one is the correct one. Yes, ma'am.
Can you look on the computer and see if I have a extension like you did?
I can try.